How's it going? Another review. I don't even know how many days it is at this point. I haven't really been paying attention. I recorded a lot of these in a row, and I don't really remember how many, so some amount of days in a row. But what's the one today? Well, some random thing I happen to read, which is, I mean, there's a couple of different titles I found. This one, I mean, is I listened to my husband and brought in a lover. I've also seen as my husband said I brought in a lover. Whatever. I don't know. Same thing. Um, this is literally like your Hallmark movie. Manhwa. Yeah, quick, right off the bat, rating, like a 7. I don't know. Listen, I don't know if I'm just sappy or what, but I read way too many of these, like, romance fantasy things. And, yeah, I don't know, this one's fine. I think if you have the typical taste that a guy does, then you might rate it like a, I don't know, like a 5? If you have the typical taste, but I kind of like romance stuff, so I'm going like a 7, 8, somewhere in that ballpark. Yeah. Alright, moving on. What's it about? Well, as the title kind of implies, so much cheating. Holy god. I have never seen a manga with more cheating in romantic relationships than this one. Jesus Christ. uh, this is the main character. I think her name is Luis. And this is her husband. And this is the lover of her. I'm not going to go crazy with what happens in the story because I don't know. I don't feel like it. But I'll give you the general rundown. So Luis, I'm not going to get into any specifics about her history or whatever, but she's basically like, you know, a commoner, I guess you could say, at the start, as far as she knows. And she's with this sleazebag, who I'm not going to go into any spoilers as to what exactly is up with him, but he cheats a lot. He goes out with a lot of women and does it like right in front of her without even considering her. It's like, whoa, man. Oh boy, this is the scumbag central, huh? And, you know, she's all like, oh god, I don't know what to do, I'm so sad. And he's like, oh, you know, she can't speak up because she's a peasant. And at one point he says, well, I mean, I'm getting lovers all the time, and if you're so upset about it, why don't you do it? And it just so happens around that time, her friend from the past shows up and happens to be with this guy who's like, I think he's considered like a duke, you know? He has that duke look, right? If you've watched like any number of these, or read any number of these stories, that's the duke. Yeah, so he's, you know, back from a expedition or whatever, and it just so happens that her friend is a part of that expedition. She meets with that friend, as well as happens to run into this guy while he's gravely wounded, and she helps him. Once she meets her little buddy, everything goes kind of awry. That whole message came in from her husband about getting a lover or whatever of her own. And her, you know, she sends a message to her one and only friend, hey, you know, my husband told me to get a lover, I don't even know what to do. And this duke shows a little interest in her because of, you know, helping her, and, you know, she just seems interesting to him, like the typical romance story plot line. And tells her friend, like, well, I'll act as her lover. So, yeah, that's like the basic setup here. He ends up acting as her lover, right? The whole fake lover plot, but you kind of grow romantically attached over time. You know, it's the super generic, right? So, I guess I kind of want to get into some notes. That's like the basic idea of the series. Yes, he's acting as a fake lover. You know, your typical beats are going to be hit. Like, this guy's like, I don't know if I like this now that it's actually happening. And, you know, she's trying to make him jealous, so they're doing all these fake things, but oh man, they're actually kind of growing attached. Oh. Yeah. So, I want to get into some of the stuff that I think makes this series a potential 8 in a world of like 400 of these different series. Number one, the main character, like, okay, this is a very common trope, the idea that, like, the main heroine or whatever is like, oh, they're really good with a sword and they're such a good fighter. But the problem is, they always, like, say that, but they never show it. Or if they do show it, there's always someone that's better that just so happens to be around, and it's like, okay, well, what's the point in making them so good at everything if they suck when it matters? This series actually kind of does that well. So this is the main girl disguised or whatever, but yeah, so in this series, they actually kind of, I don't, they use it effectively, like she's actually a competent character. Like, if they say she's good at something, she's actually good at something, and it's not just like, oh, it's a fake thing. It's like, no, like, when they say she's good at this, or she's good at that, like, she's actually good at it. And they don't have somebody else come in and it's just like, oh, well, this guy's just better anyway, so it doesn't even matter that she's good. Like, no, they actually kind of use the fact that she's good at things and she's capable, which I think is kind of neat. I like that. I'll also say, like, there's that common idea where, like, you'll forgive anything that happens in a series, like, oh, the main guy does something bad, but she'll forgive him. Like, no, like, I feel like these two were actually written pretty well in the fact that they actually, like, when something bad happens, the other one has to apologize to get through it, right? And they can also, they're not like, oh, just because he said something bad means, like, oh, he means it 100% or something. Like, they can actually read between the lines, which I have to give it credit. Like, a lot of these other series do not do that. They're pretty bare bones when it comes to that stuff. They're kind of like, oh, he insulted me, I hate you, but now I forgive you, even though it's only one chapter later and you never said sorry. I have to admit, they do that a little better in this series. So I think those are the two that really hit me, I guess. Like, the main female protagonist actually being competent, and the main male protagonist actually, like, being a human. I think that's kind of nice, you know? It's a little different than other series. You know, this is like, he's pretty typical, you know, the guy that does all the things wrong is terrible and then thinks that he deserves everything. And of course they have, you know, like the whole, like, king that does bad things all the time and, you know, just wants this guy dead and blah blah blah, right? Like, super basic stuff. But, you know, I think the secondary elements kind of elevate it to me, so I'm thinking, like, between a 7 and an 8. Depends on how much you like this stuff, but I feel like it has all those other elements, but it also does, like, you know, a good female lead, and also, like, the relationship between the female lead and the male lead is pretty good, I would say. I like the kind of sappy romance stuff, but I also feel like it often, you know, doesn't flesh characters out that much, and they're kind of one note, but these two at least have some, you know, something more going on there. If I had to say, like, problems, like, why I wouldn't give it any more than this, I mean, she makes some weird choices at times. Like, she definitely is way better than other characters, but every once in a while she goes, like, you know, back to the basics of this kind of series where it's like, I'm just going to do this random thing for no reason. It's like, oh, okay. You know, I haven't read everything. I read like 40 chapters or something. But, yeah, I mean, maybe that'll be better later. Like, they'll actually have explanations for why she did certain things, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, my whole idea with this series is more so evaluating things on what I have, and, you know, also, if it gets good after 100 chapters, is it really that good? I don't know. I feel like, you know, you have to show at least some potential early on. So, I mean, yeah, overall, I would say it's somewhere between a 7 or an 8. Like, it's a 7 or an 8 depending on what you like. I don't know. I kind of like some sappy romance here and there, and this hits that, this scratches that itch for me. Yeah, likable female lead that's actually competent, not just like pretend competent. Pretty solid, like, you know, realistic and well done male lead. The main, like, villain, I guess, not really that well done. I like some of the plot points. They're kind of interesting, but they're also a little silly. But overall, yeah, I mean, I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. Yeah. So, if you have any other series that you want me to cover, let me know below. I'd appreciate liking and subscribing. And yeah, I'll see ya.